Hi, everybody. This is Jim Graham and David Blake from A to Z Sales, and we wanted to talk to you about a new exciting development at GeneralAire. They're going to have some new humidifiers for the upcoming season, and we wanted to just go over what some of the ideas were for the new change. Also in the background, we're going to be having Jake Alfrey join us every once in a while. He'll be advancing our slides and helping us with the technical side. So General is going to have a new line of humidifiers coming out for the fall of 2020 or 2020. And I just wanted to start with some of the things that General had to say about why they went about this. You know, General has been doing humidification since the 1950s. And I'll tell you, they know humidification. That's where they started. That's what their mainstay is. So this is going to be an exciting development. They've embarked on a new revolutionary design with their bypass and steam humidifiers. Today, we're going to talk about the bypasses. And then on a second podcast, they'll be on steam. Using the theory that Louis Sullivan always said, that form follows function, you know, General has taken an outside in and a bottom up approach to a process that brought them to a revolutionary design. They've gone from contractors to engineers to design engineers to marketing, and took basically from the bottom to the top versus top to the bottom, and designed around function. And the function was the most important part to get the most humidification out of the bypass, which is pretty important today because of smaller spaces, smaller plenums, and lower plenum temperatures. So one of the things that they're going to start with is they've also decided that with this introduction, they're going to have a new logo. So with the new logo, they kind of have a light and airy scheme and a little bit of a swoosh kind of air going through the GeneralAire, as if air is going through the pad. Jake, could you advance to the next one? Thanks, Jake. Another look at one of the ones that they'll use for the pads and that kind of thing. Next slide. So going back to the introduction of saying that the new product design was revolved around innovation, and they've done listening and designing, and then they delivered the answers from bottom to top. David, you were in on some of those conversations. What's your feeling on some of these, on this process?
Well, first of all, I love it. As you know, I was a distributor for most of my life, and I carried General products. So to see what they're doing, I carried everything they have up to this point, but this is something new that's, to me, revolutionary, and I'm very excited. I've seen the design, I saw it at Aire, and I'm excited as a rep, but I would definitely be excited as a distributor as well, because I think what they've done is separate themselves from the pack and give themselves a leg up in that competition. So it's going to be
good. David, thank you. And I like that you really emphasize that we have something different. So Jake, next slide. And the next one. So here we have on the left a picture of the new humidifier, and on the right, a new humidifier on its side. We're going to get into more detail on what was changed, but as you can see, it's no longer the cover, no longer is the entire form of the humidifier. It's been compacted so that it's going to direct the air right through the pad. So next slide. David, you want to maybe expand on this slide?
Yeah, I think what I learned from General is that the design, this lower profile, they've taken some plastic out of the chassis, and what they've done is direct the airflow across a bigger pad, as we'll learn in a little bit. But the way they designed this humidifier is going to be much more efficient, more effective, and the air will be dispersed more evenly across the pad. Not to mention that it's lower profile for installation.
Yeah, and those are all good points. You know, before the plastic had a dome over it, and a lot of the air was getting hung up on the top and the bottom and wasn't really being transferred through the pad correctly. So this is really a design that's going to emphasize the air movement through the pad, which is going to help with the lower plenum temperatures. So next slide. So gallons per day. We're basically the new humidifiers are going to be a 32. The part number for the 3200 and the 4200. The 3200 is going to do 12 gallons a day, and the 4200 is going to do 17 gallons a day. Both of those part numbers are generated from, they are the square footage that the humidifier will handle. So the 3200 is 3200 square foot. A lot of this has, as you can see on the slide, has been redesigned for the shorter run cycles. So this is going to help a lot with that. Next slide. David, why don't you expand on this slide?
Yeah, I kind of touched on it before, but it just shows pictures in that type of in the blue arrows, and it's showing how the air is going to be dispersed across the pad a lot more evenly than the older style humidifiers, because of the chassis were so big. And with this lower profile, and the way it's almost like a ram induction, how it's forcing that air flow across there. So it's going to be all the way around a better product in the near future when it comes out.
Okay, next slide. Yeah, it's going to have a low profile chassis. This is going to eliminate a lot of the air cycling up on the top and the bottom. It's going to move smoothly through the pad. As you can see on the left, that was the Elite, the old design, where the cavities were bigger on the top and the bottom. Now on the right, with the new one, all of that air is really smashed and directed into the center, and giving it a much greater chance to hit the entire pad. So next. Again, just a kind of a CAD drawing of the difference between the new one and the old one on the left and the new one on the right. Next slide.
If I could just interject, I'm sorry. You know, with all the IAQ items today, oftentimes contractors run into tight spaces, and sometimes furnaces are in a small closet. Sometimes they're in the hallway in your living, near your living room. But that smaller profile chassis can be very helpful to a contractor that has space constraints.
That's a good point, David. And that's getting tighter and tighter every day, isn't it?
It sure is.
Alrighty, next. Again, another picture of what we're talking about. You can see on the left here, you can see how much of the humidifier on the Elites was not really being used. Next. So we have a reduced chassis frame, and some of the changes in this have been around the pad. They've reduced some of the framing on it so that you're going to get more pad. Before, the framing from the top, from the distribution trough, and the side panels really went over the pad so that there was a reduced amount of pad that you were getting to. Let's go to the next slide. Here's an example of what we were talking about. The sides and the bottom of the frame are much smaller, and the distribution trough is smaller so that it doesn't impede the pad as much. We're going to go on one of the other slides, we're going to see how the water is distributed, but that distribution trough is much smaller than it was before. David, anything that you have to say on it?
I do. I love the idea that the pads have been changed. In the past, I've heard, issues where they're just a little bit too small, they're falling out, so they weren't used as much with the competition's products. And this kind of gives us a leg up now to have an industry standard pad size. And I go back to something I remember from General said when they introduced this, and it was the sole purpose of a humidifier is to hold a wetted pad. So we're not only holding a wetted pad, we're making it as efficient as possible now with the new design.
Awesome, David. That's a good point, because what we're doing now in this redesign that wasn't available with the old design. The old design, the pads were exclusive to our humidifiers. The new pads, they're going to be able to exchange with an Aire pad. So we're both going to be able to go into ours, and we'll be able to go into an Aire's pad. So next slide. David, you want to talk about the distributor trough?
Absolutely. I mean, if you go back in time, they weren't as efficient as they are today. And when you look at what General's done to this one, they've capitalized on how they developed this trough, and now it's much more efficient to get the water dispersed evenly across the pad. And from left to right, top to bottom, you'll see that that's what it's doing. So it's going to be a great addition to the product line.
Yeah, I think, in this also, we had a very good, actually the distribution trough on the old design was very good too. One of the things that will be different about this one is it's a little tapered from the center to the ends, so that the water will run down all the way to the end, and that will fill back to the center. The other one didn't do that. It was just flat. So this one is a little bit better in that not only will we get every hole, but that water for sure will drain down to the end and then fill to the center. So it'll give better water distribution throughout the whole pad.
Mm-hmm.
So next. David, why don't you speak to this one?
Yeah, what this was I believe it was a test they talked about with red dye. And when they did it to the new humidifier, it shows exactly that it's hitting the pad all the way across the surface area. So it's just another test that confirms the findings and what we're telling everybody right now.
Thanks, David. Next slide. So this is the new humidifier. You know, you can see on the, one of the things that's going to be nice about this is on the bottom, there's just one clip. So you'll be able to take off the cover just with one little switch at the bottom. Also, in changing the pad, it's really easy because the stainless steel supply tube is connected to the frame, not to the pad. So when you take the pad out, you don't have to move the stainless steel supply tube, which our competitors, you have to disassemble that. I don't know, David, have you had any experience with that? I know that you've put some of these in.
Yeah, I have. I love this new design. I love the stainless steel tube. I think it's just an added feature to a lot of other competitors' poly tubing. And I love the idea that it's a quick and easy way to change a pad.
Yeah, it's extremely easy. You just pop the cover and pop out the pad frame and pop in the new pad and you're ready to go.
And I think the other piece too there, Jim, is that they're talking about how easy it is to change from left to right, and that's important depending on your configuration and where you're working. But it's just flipping the top, so it makes it very easy.
Good point. It is easy for left to right, which is also going to be nice for flexibility in a tight space.
Absolutely.
All right, next slide. So we talked about the snap in place cover, the stainless steel tube. And one thing to mention is all of the plastic in this is UV stable, so we're not going to have any problems with any UV lights that you want to put into the system. Why don't we do the next slide? And we're also going to have some additional features to our humidistat. And so the old humidistat was GFX4 or GFX3, and now we have a GFX4. So next slide. So it's basically the same housing, the same look as the old one, so it's interchangeable physically. David, you want to talk to some of the features? There's one glaring one there that's really...
Yes, I mean, I know, and I'm looking right on the screen here, but yes, new wiring configuration eliminates the need for a current sensing device, which, you know, the bottom line, that's an added cost to a contractor. So to eliminate that, that's wonderful. Knowing that it controls the furnace blower is a huge plus. So, and I think it's a sleek, sharp. I have the older version in my home, and it works great. I love it.
Thanks. And yeah, the fact that we can now control the furnace blower, that's huge.
Absolutely.
Next slide. So we're coming to the end, but this is kind of a tease. This is what's going to come up for the motor assisted humidification, and this is going to be out towards the end of the year, and this will be 20+ gallons per day. So this is pretty much what it's going to look like, but we don't have that ready to go yet, so it's just kind of take a look at the new design. You know, in review, General has been a leader in delivering humidification to the home since the 1950s. And for them to come to us in 2020 and say that there's more to do speaks to their passion about humidification in the house and constantly looking for ways to be better than they were the day before. And David, I know that you put some of these in like we have stated before, and I know that you've been really excited about this.
Absolutely. I think when you look at the history of General and then you see what they're doing now, but they kept that automotive grade plastics from Detroit, Michigan, and they got a stainless steel supply tube there, and what they've done to the trough, the size of the unit, the design of the unit. I think it makes for an exciting year. I think, well, correct, it is a 5-year warranty for the product line on the 3200 and the 4200.
That's correct.
And it's supposed to come in June or July?
June.
Okay.
June
So it's around the corner. So I honestly, I can't wait to get it out to the masses.
Okay, well, that's our wrap up for today on the new humidifier for bypass. And next week, we'll be talking about the new steam humidifier, which is equally, if not more exciting. There's some really special changes coming to that. And so for Jim Graham, David Blake, and Jake Allfrey, we want to thank you for using General, and we'll see you next week.